Africa. The name itself conjures images of immense scale and breathtaking diversity. From the northernmost tip of Tunisia to the southernmost point of South Africa, the continent spans a vast array of ecosystems and climates. Imagine sweeping savannas where herds of wildebeest and zebra undertake epic migrations. These migrations are among the most spectacular wildlife events on Earth, drawing visitors from around the globe. Picture the dense, verdant rainforests of the Congo Basin, a green ocean pulsing with life. This region is home to an incredible array of flora and fauna, many of which are found nowhere else on the planet. Consider the formidable deserts like the Sahara, a sea of sand and rock. The Sahara is the largest hot desert in the world, stretching across multiple countries and offering a stark yet beautiful landscape. Then there are the majestic mountains like Kilimanjaro, Africa's highest point. This iconic peak attracts climbers and adventurers, all eager to conquer its snow-capped summit. The continent is blessed with mighty rivers like the Nile and the Congo. These rivers have been the lifeblood of civilizations for millennia, supporting agriculture, trade, and culture. The Zambezi River thunders over the Victoria Falls, a spectacle of nature's raw power. Known as the smoke that thunders, this waterfall is one of the 7 natural wonders of the world. Along its coastlines, Africa meets the great oceans, from the Mediterranean to the Indian Ocean. These coastal areas are rich in marine life and offer stunning vistas. Coral reefs teem with colorful fish, and mangrove forests protect the shores. These ecosystems are vital for the health of our planet, providing habitat and protection for countless species. This incredible variety of landscapes makes Africa a continent of unparalleled natural wonder. From its vast deserts to its lush rainforests, from its towering mountains to its vibrant coral reefs, Africa is a land of endless discovery and awe. Long before European ships charted its coastlines, Africa was a continent of vibrant societies and sophisticated civilizations. Great kingdoms and empires rose and fell, leaving behind legacies that still resonate today. Consider the Kingdom of Kush, a powerful state along the Nile River. The Ghana, Mali, and Songhai empires dominated the trans-Saharan trade routes. Cities like Timbuktu became renowned centers of learning. In southern Africa, the Kingdom of Great Zimbabwe stands as another remarkable example. These ancient civilizations demonstrate the depth of Africa's history, a history of innovation, complex societies, and far-reaching connections long before the colonial era began. The late 19th century witnessed a dramatic shift in Europe's relationship with Africa. This period, often referred to as the Age of Imperialism, saw European nations aggressively expanding their territories overseas. The continent of Africa, rich in natural resources and largely unexplored by Europeans, became a prime target for colonization. European powers, driven by economic ambitions and national rivalries, embarked on what is now known as the Scramble for Africa. This rush to claim African lands was fueled by the desire for new markets, raw materials, and the prestige of having a vast empire. Explorers and missionaries were often the first to venture into the African interior, mapping out territories and establishing initial contacts with local communities. Their reports of abundant resources and strategic locations further ignited the interest of European governments. To avoid conflict among themselves, German Chancellor Otto von Bismarck convened the Berlin Conference in 1884. This meeting aimed to create a framework for the orderly colonization of Africa, preventing potential wars between European powers over African territories. Representatives from 14 European nations attended the conference, but notably no African leaders were invited. The absence of African voices meant that the decisions made were entirely in the interest of the European powers, with little regard for the impact on the indigenous populations. The primary aim of the Berlin Conference was to regulate colonization and trade in Africa. The European powers sought to establish clear rules to avoid conflicts and ensure that their colonial ambitions could be pursued without interference from rival nations. The General Act of the Berlin Conference laid down rules for European powers to claim territory. One of the key principles was the concept of effective occupation, which required a European power to establish authority in a region before it could be officially claimed. Effective occupation meant that a European power had to demonstrate its ability to control and administer territory, often through the establishment of settlements, military posts, or administrative structures. The decisions made in Berlin had profound consequences for Africa. The arbitrary division of the continent disregarded the complex tapestry of ethnic, linguistic, and cultural boundaries that existed among African communities. The conference legitimized the division of Africa among European powers, creating borders that often split communities and grouped together disparate groups, leading to long-term social and political challenges. These new lines often disregarded existing ethnic, linguistic, and cultural boundaries. The imposition of these artificial borders laid the groundwork for many of the conflicts and political issues that Africa faces today. This artificial division laid the groundwork for many political and social challenges. The legacy of the Berlin Conference is still felt across the continent as African nations continue to navigate the complex aftermath of colonial rule and strive for unity and stability. The imposition of colonial rule brought sweeping changes to African societies. The newly drawn borders fundamentally altered the political and social landscape. They cut across ancient migratory routes and separated communities. Colonial administrations were established to extract resources for the colonizing power. Cash crop economies and mining operations exploited African labor. The wealth generated rarely benefited local populations. Colonial powers implemented different systems of governance, often manipulating traditional structures. Africans were largely excluded from meaningful political participation. European languages and legal systems replaced traditional ones. The psychological impact of being treated as subjects in their own land fostered a deep yearning for dignity and freedom. The dawn of freedom, the struggle for independence. This chapter delves into the monumental journey of African nations as they fought for their independence from colonial rule. It was a time of great upheaval and transformation, a period that reshaped the continent's destiny. The period following the Second World War marked a significant turning point in Africa's history. The war had weakened the colonial powers and the winds of change began to sweep across the continent. African nations saw an opportunity to assert their right to self-governance. African soldiers returned home with a heightened sense of injustice about their own subjugation. Having fought for freedom abroad, they were now determined to fight for their own freedom at home. Their experiences in the war had ignited a fervent desire for independence. The ideals of self-determination resonated powerfully across the colonized world. Inspired by global movements and the principles of freedom and equality, African leaders and citizens alike began to organize and demand their rights. Nationalist movements demanded an end to colonial rule. These movements were characterized by passionate speeches, mass protests, and a unified call for independence. Leaders emerged who would become the faces of their nation's struggles. In some regions, the path to freedom was relatively peaceful. Negotiations and diplomatic efforts led to the smooth transition of power, allowing nations to celebrate their newfound independence without bloodshed. In others, the struggle for independence was protracted and violent. Armed conflicts and liberation wars became the harsh reality for many, as they fought against entrenched colonial forces unwilling to relinquish control. Settler colonies often fiercely resisted decolonization. The settlers, with deep-rooted interests in the land, opposed the independence movements, leading to intense and often brutal confrontations. Armed liberation movements emerged, engaging in guerrilla warfare. These fighters, often operating in difficult and dangerous conditions, played a crucial role in challenging colonial rule and pushing for independence. The determination of African freedom fighters proved unyielding. Their resilience and unwavering commitment to the cause of independence inspired many and kept the momentum of the movements alive. The international climate also played a crucial role. Global opinion began to shift in favor of decolonization, and international organizations, including the United Nations, provided support and legitimacy to the independence movements. The winds of change were blowing irresistibly across the continent. The collective efforts of African nations, combined with international support, eventually led to the dawn of a new era of freedom and self-determination for the people of Africa. Voices of a new era independence, movements and their champions. The journey towards independence was spearheaded by remarkable individuals and dynamic movements. In Ghana, Kwame Nkrumah emerged as a pivotal leader. In Kenya, Jomo Kenyatta became the symbolic leader of the nationalist movement. In Tanzania, Julius Nyerere led his country to independence through peaceful means. In Senegal, Leopold Sédar Senghor skillfully navigated the path to independence. In South Africa, Nelson Mandela became a global icon of resistance. These leaders dedicated their lives to the cause of African liberation. Their efforts laid the foundation for a new era of self-determination. Navigating new paths post-independence realities. Achieving independence was a momentous victory, but it brought formidable challenges. The newly sovereign nations inherited arbitrary borders. Ethnic diversity became a source of political tension and conflict. Economically, many African nations remained dependent on former colonial rulers. The infrastructure was designed for resource extraction, not internal development. There was a severe shortage of skilled personnel. Politically, the transition to stable governance proved difficult. The Cold War often interfered in African politics. Despite challenges, the post-independence era was a time of hope and achievement. Africa rising, a future forged in hope. Today, Africa is a continent brimming with dynamism and potential. Many African nations have made significant strides in democratic governance. Economically, Africa is on the move, with several economies among the fastest growing. The rise of mobile technology has transformed communication and banking. There is a growing middle class with increasing purchasing power. Challenges remain, but there is a palpable sense of optimism. African leaders and citizens are taking ownership of their development agendas. The youth of Africa represent its greatest asset. Young Africans are driving change in technology, arts, and entrepreneurship. Their energy and creativity promise a brighter, more prosperous future. The enduring heartbeat of a continent. Africa's journey is a story of extraordinary resilience and enduring spirit. It is a continent of incredible human diversity and cultural heritage. To truly appreciate Africa, we must look beyond outdated stereotypes. We must see the continent in all its complexity and listen to African voices. The future of Africa holds immense promise for all of humanity. Let us embrace this journey with open minds and open hearts. The narrative of Africa deserves to be told, understood, and celebrated.